Okay. All right, so we've got the stream going. Okay, Mark. So it's Mark Holdgate.
That's
Hi,
right.
hi,
Good morning.
hi. Yeah, morning, Mark. My name's Paul, as you know, and I thank you for agreeing to maybe talk about your ventures into what's the technical word for a drone, or was it or unmanned aerial vehicle?
Aerial
Yeah,
vehicle.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
that's
you're a
correct.
man.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're a man, and you're
UAV.
so it is manned aerial vehicle in a way. But yeah, I got in touch with you via a friend, um, um, Anne, and Anne and I did a cycle ride
Yes,
many
that's right.
years ago. We stayed in contact, and yeah, I put a notice out, just seeing if anybody may have experience using drones, and she put me in touch with you. Um, so how do you know Anne generally, just as an introduction?
From my previous career, and I worked together over a number of years in varying capacities, and we've remained good friends ever since.
Okay. Yeah, she's a great motivator.
Very much
Yeah.
so.
Mm. Um, and Anne mentioned that you've moved into using drones in your business. So, well, what is the business, and how are you employing the drone?
The business is probably more of an offshoot from my photography work. So I do a lot of photography work, and I decided that I would invest in some drone technology, just as it was becoming quite a popular thing, and for me to then be able to do videography in addition to assisting with aerial surveys. So that was primarily the
Ah.
reason for doing that.
Mm. And if it's not too invasive, just to ask, what's your main career, and what has been your career path?
Um, Previously, I was a police officer. I was medically retired, and uh, the photography was something that I'd done semi-professionally up until that point.
Mm.
So I decided to go more professional, and that's where I am.
Okay, so your career took a different route, um, and that means you probably self-taught uh,
Very much so,
in
yes.
photography.
Except for the in photography, yes. With the drone, I had to go away and do a course in order to be
Ah,
properly qualified by the Civil Aviation Authority to do drone work.
so the Civil Aviation Authority. That means you are an accredited pilot.
That's
Okay,
correct, yeah.
and you said you do two things. Like one is the visual work, and then the other is the aerial surveys.
Yeah, so videography, which complements the photography side of things, and aerial surveying for building purposes and things like that, where it's cheaper and more cost effective to throw a drone up into the sky than it is to get scaffold and so on set up in order for people to work safely at height.
Okay, so safety comes into it. Yeah, I
Very much so, all the time.
that's one thing we've been speaking about related to bringing robotics or technology into replacing certain tasks in a job. And things that come up are it's
Yes,
probably a bit more healthier, it could be a little bit safer. So safety is a thing related to employing a drone in a task. So what process is involved in you getting certified? What was the course?
I spent 5 days on an intensive course with a licensed company, licensed by the Civil Aviation Authority, to teach people how to fly drones safely, but also in a professional capacity. So without that qualification, back at that time, you weren't allowed to earn money from flying a drone unless you had that qualification.
Uh-huh.
And the qualification was put in place to ensure that there were standard operating procedures on a national basis and that everything was done with safety in mind.
Mm. And is it an expensive course, or do you think is it an entry level course that most people can access?
Um, it's changed since. The regulations have changed a lot since I started working with drones, and there are fewer qualifications required now than there were back at the beginning when I started.
Mm.
So my 5-day course at that point in time cost me around about £1,000 to do.
Okay.
Whereas now you can operate a drone in certain circumstances without having to have had a 5-day course, but you would need to have a certificate of competency under the new regulations to say that you've basically demonstrated competence and safety in flying a drone and understanding the regulations that apply to you as a drone pilot.
You said that the regulations are probably based per country right now. Each country is determining that.
There was a European standard which all countries in the European Union conformed to, so that drone operators could move around countries and not have to have different licenses for the different countries, and it was all standardized. Obviously, I don't know as yet what the implications will be for that with regards to where we are having left the European Union. But at the moment, one country would recognise another country's qualifications provided you completed the set standard or attained the same standard that they were all looking at. Yeah.
Do you recall some of the standards that you were complying to on the course?
Well, it was more about learning various regulations with regards to the air navigation regulations, and also learning about meteorology, learning about map reading skills, and also about the regulations with regards to restricted airspace, de-restricted airspace, and so on and so forth, and also how to interpret a navigation chart as well that pilots use.
Wow.
So all those things were covered within the course.
Oh, they're typically analog skills.
Yeah. They are, yeah, very much so, and they're the basic skills that a pilot of a real aircraft would have to learn and understand in order to gain part of their qualifications as well. So it was with a view to putting us on a par, if you like, with understanding the basics that pilots have to understand, so that we could operate safely and share the airspace with them.
Okay. So Nate, you have a, is it a, if I'm doing that, I'm imagining there's a license this size that you keep in your wallet and you just let people know you're licensed?
No, it's all done electronically. So you'll get your license emailed to you by the Civil Aviation Authority, and that will remain current for a specific period of time. Well, it used to. Again, things have changed, the regulations have changed, and so now you don't necessarily apply to the Civil Aviation for a license. You go on a course and you will get an accreditation, if you like, which will be issued to you by the company that's issuing accreditation.
And then, of course, you invest money to become accredited, and then you invest in the kit. So
yes, absolutely.
How long have you been piloting now?
I think it's about, let me think, 4 years now, thereabouts.
And I imagine the incrementations in the tech jump dramatically. Yeah, so
it's kind of like buying a computer. You can buy a computer one day, and then the following week something better has come out, and all of a sudden you're left with some technology that used to be top of the market, but now isn't. And it very much applies with drones, but also the technology has adapted to fit in around the new regulations to make it easier for people to use drones in certain circumstances where they wouldn't have been able to if they'd had a larger drone, like the type I use, in built-up areas, for example. So if we do a little bit of technical talk for a moment, if you have a drone that weighs 250 grams or less, you can fly that in an urban area. Now, previously, you'd have to have special permissions from the Civil Aviation Authority, and you'd have to have a fully prepared risk assessment and plan as to why you needed to fly over an urban area, certainly with around 50 meters space around the people that you're working with. And that would cost extra money on top of the license that you already had. So they were very reluctant to grant people those special permissions unless they had exceptional technology with a lot of fail-safes built in. So you can end up spending quite a lot of money just to do some filming in an urban area where other people wouldn't necessarily be allowed to go. But now the regulations have changed. So if you have a drone that's 250 grams or less, If it falls out of the sky and hits somebody on the head, it's less likely to hurt them as much as it would do a bigger drone that we were flying around, a few years back.
And what's the a visual equivalent to 250 grams?
Wow. Let me think. It's probably going to be around about the same weight as your mobile phone. Um,
Okay.
I would think that's probably going to be about that kind of weight.
Yeah, but Newton's law suggests that at a velocity it's gonna make a lot of damage.
It's probably still going to hurt when it lands.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but maybe not as much
Mm,
as it would do if it was a
mm,
bigger drone.
mm. So thanks for just going over that terrain about how the restrictions maybe are in place in urban areas. Could you name some projects that you've recently done and which environments within?
I did probably my most technical one was a commercial shoot for a startup company who was demonstrating a new um, battery pack for bicyclists, um, so that they could use devices attached to their bike with USB connections. And we did the filming out in Sussex, very close to Goodwood, where they have the race course. And of course, at Goodwood, there is also an airstrip at Goodwood.
Okay.
So, in order to conduct my flying operations there, I had to do a very extensive risk assessment beforehand, which meant traveling out there before we did the shoot, surveying the area, looking at all of the obstacles. And we were working on a hill which had a couple of aerial masts on it as well. So I had to be very mindful of those, not only from the perspective of potentially crashing into them, but also in case they were interfering with the radio signals between my control unit and the drone. So those were the things that in the immediate sight of the filming that I had to be aware of. And then I had to go and liaise with the control tower at Goodwood Airport because we were operating within their zone, if you like. So I then had to present to them what my intentions were, where I was going to be flying, how long I was going to be flying for, and so on and so forth. And after they'd discussed that with me, they gave me approval to operate where we were working. And then it was just a question of looking at the weather, what the prevailing winds were, which direction they're coming from. So you've got all of that prepared, but also looking around to see, in the event that your control unit loses contact with the drone, how far away is the drone actually going to fly before it crashes into the ground and runs out of battery? So you've got to factor into your risk assessment plan all of that information. And it took me probably a day just to write out the risk assessment. And you have to file the risk assessment before you go out, because if something happens and the civil aviation then become involved, they will say, right, we want to see your risk assessment, and you have to be able to produce it to them there and then. So quite a lot of work goes into it, into the planning and the preparation of it. Yeah.
So that covers the idea that you have to be calm, and this is one of the topics we're covering: technical communication.
Very much so.
It varies, doesn't it? It could be instructional, it could be clearly expressing technical language to a person that has less technical understanding. But you have to be a technical communicator, don't you?
You do. You have to understand the terminology that, for example, the air traffic control tower uses with regards to their operations, but you also have to be able to change that to be able to explain to your clients what the issues are around your risk assessment and so on in a way that they will understand it, because they're not going to understand what the parlance is around air traffic control talk or what the drone pilots use and so on and so forth. So you in a kind of way, you're almost like an interpreter in some respects. Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. Technical communication is interpreting some tech vocabulary or expressions or just things way beyond the client's need to know.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And there have been other occasions where people have asked me to do some work for them, which I've had to say I can't do it, because in order to do that work, I would be breaching a number of the regulations enforced by the Civil Aviation Authority, particularly around working in built-up areas. And it made it very difficult back at the beginning to do that kind of work, because the regulations required that you had control over every building, every car, every person, and every road within 50 meters of the area that you were flying the drone, and you had to have that at all times. So
Well,
if you can imagine doing that in a busy urban area where there are lots of buildings, lots of people, lots of cars and roads, being then able to take control of that 50-meter radius properly so that everybody knew what was going on, it would be impossible to do that and be cost effective at the same time. So,
yeah.
those were the kind of jobs where people were asking me to do work for them, and I had to say, no, I can't do that because, aside from the safety side of things, the civil aviation would pull my license on the spot if I was found to be working in contravention of the regulations.
It's what you've just described sounds like it's the equivalent of a film set where it's cordoned off with it's like a crime scene for 50
Very much. Yeah,
meters. So it's
very much so.
it has to be purified. Mm. Um,
Very much.
so the aerial surveying interests me in terms that one of the projects I've seen is um, uh, monitoring the heat loss or the seepage of heat from buildings with
Yeah.
infrared cameras. So what do you think of these applications of the drone tech?
So with each drone, you can interchange the cameras that are attached to them. So you can have specialist cameras for particular assignments that you're involved with. And as you pointed out, that's a very good example of where you can identify heat loss from buildings. Similarly, with the fire brigade, they also use drones now at the scenes of large fires, so they can identify where the hot spots are using those cameras, and they can then deploy their resources more effectively to tackle the fire and bring the fire under control more quickly. And again, using heat-seeking technology, police forces now are using drones in ever greater numbers because they're cheaper than flying a helicopter. They make less noise, so they disturb fewer people. You can deploy them in certain instances where it might be dangerous to deploy the helicopter. And they have infrared cameras attached to them. So at night, they can operate just as much as they can in the daytime. And a number of missing people have successfully been found using drone technology in large open spaces that would take a long time for police officers to search on the ground. So with my survey stuff, I was doing roof surveys, for example, on tall buildings. So where they're looking to inspect the roof to see what repairs may be needed or what damage has been caused to it. Chimneys, they're a big one because a lot of people suffer problems around their chimney stacks becoming loose or unstable. So again, it's easy to take the drone up and just fly it around in an orbit, we call that, around in a circle around the chimney with 4K live time video feed showing the surveyors on the site exactly what they're looking at and getting really close detail to it. So it's almost like they're there themselves. And of course, if they want to see a particular part of the chimney, then all they have to do is direct my drone or get me to direct my drone where they want to look at, and we can do that. So that's the sort of stuff that we do.
Yeah. So your service is helping a professional be more agile in what, like the surveyors. They're able to
Very much
answer
so.
questions
Again,
instantly.
Yes, and again, it's safety. It saves somebody having to go up a ladder. The risks of that are quite significant, obviously, and there are regulations with regards to working at height for those people. So yeah.
Yeah, so we get back to safety and security again, and is I think that covers a lot of ground, doesn't it? What applications have you seen, in your opinion, about where drones are overstepping the mark? Like military applications.
Oh, military drones are a completely different beast
Mm.
to civilian type
Yeah, I
drone
think
work,
this is the
and
problem, isn't it? The word drone is so vast and it's an emotive
yes,
word. Yeah.
very much so. Yeah, absolutely. And when we talk about drones, people think of the military type that the forces are using in hostile areas where it's safer to deploy a drone rather than it is to put people on the ground or put planes in the sky. but drones can be used for good things. And of course, there's the upcoming technology which is likely to hit us at some point in the near future, where drones can deliver packages, and could be useful out in rural areas where we have impoverished countries, to deliver
Yeah.
medical supplies, for example, things like that. So there are a lot of good uses that drones can be put to, as well as the as well as the military uses that we put drones to use for as well.
Yeah, I saw an article yesterday of I think it's Estonia is possibly exploring mail drops at air sites
Yeah,
of packages. Mm, okay.
yeah. And
Uh,
the only issues that we have in this country at the moment is the safety side of it all. That's the only thing that's holding things back,
okay.
is being able to fly these drones and operate them safely.
Mm. Um, yeah, thanks, Mark, for talking about what you're doing with drones. What's your next project coming up?
I haven't actually got anything on the books at the moment. I'm just recovering from having some surgery, so I haven't got anything scheduled in the diary at the moment. I've got a couple of weddings coming up next year. It may well be that I'll be using the drone or
Mm,
doing some videography at weddings, which is the nice side of drone work. You're getting
mm,
to share somebody's special day with them, and you're recording it all on video from angles that you wouldn't be able to get a camera shot from. So,
mm,
yeah,
mm.
there's probably going to be a bit of that coming up.
Okay. And just finally, the kit that you have behind you. That's your editing suite.
Yeah, I use the computer I've got is one that I built myself. Uh, I use 3 screens simply because it's easy for image editing and video editing. As you probably know yourself, having a couple of screens at least is very beneficial. And the computer is powerful enough to handle all of the editing tasks that I've got to do with my video footage, and
Okay.
also my photography side of things as well.
Mm, mm. And I did a little bit of sleuthing just finally on your Facebook profile because we connected. And your gaming uh, tab here is Elite Dangerous. So
That is indeed,
yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
What level are you
Um,
on Elite Dangerous, and what is it?
well, Elite Dangerous is a space sim that was first designed back in 1984, and was the first 3D wireframe game that was ever released on a computer. And over the years since 1984, it's evolved into a much more modern space sim. So we're looking at about 34 years, thereabouts,
Yeah.
35 years. So it's evolved into something that's completely different to what it was.
Mm,
It's a very enjoyable game which you can play on whatever level you want to. You can be an explorer, you can be a bounty hunter, a pirate, a miner, all sorts of things. There's no limit. I'm actually a member of the legendary Fuel Rats, and if you ever do Google the Fuel Rats from Elite Dangerous, I've featured in a couple of very prominent rescues that we've carried out on other players in the game who've run out of fuel. Um, and yeah, it's a great way of just taking yourself off out of this world into a different world altogether. But it's
yeah.
a very realistic, it's a
Mm,
one-to-one recreation of the Milky Way galaxy, and
mm,
it's a very accurate one.
mm,
So yeah,
yeah.
there we
And
go.
it sounds like there's a lot of team spirit involved.
Very much
Yeah.
so. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I've got a group of friends that we play online together. So yeah,
All right. Well, Mark, I wish you a happy and fast convalescence after the
thank
operation.
you, Paul.
All right.
Appreciate that. Thank
All
you.
right. So I'll just cut the stream here. Okay. So cheers, Mark.
No worries. Hope that was all right for you.